Imagine this, you're 67 years old. You wake up with the same dull ache in your knees. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, brace yourself for the familiar stiffness, and whisper, "Not again." You've tried it all, pain relievers, creams, even yoga, but no one told you the real relief might be hiding in the most unassuming place of all, minerals. Not pills, not surgery. Just 3 simple, natural elements that could quietly revolutionize the way you move, feel, and live after 60. What if the solution to your arthritis wasn't in something new, but something your body has been craving all along? In today's video on Daily Elder Advice, we'll dive into 3 underrated minerals that don't just promise temporary relief. They support your joints at the root, calm chronic inflammation, and nourish your aging body gently, naturally, and powerfully. These minerals aren't flashy. You won't see them headlining TV ads, but they are, in many ways, the unsung heroes of elderly joint health. And we're not just going to list them, we're going to explore the science, hear the stories, and uncover the lessons of real people who found freedom through small, consistent changes. You'll learn how a widow in Michigan found comfort in magnesium baths, how a retired carpenter finally rebuilt his strength with zinc, and how a soft-spoken grandma in rural Japan never missed a day of dried fruit and outlived her doctor by 18 years. So if you're over 60, struggling with arthritis, or simply want to future-proof your body, you're in the right place. Let's walk this journey together, because living with pain doesn't have to be your new normal. You deserve better. First, magnesium, the gentle muscle whisperer. There's a quiet kind of suffering that older adults rarely speak about. It's not the screaming kind of pain that demands attention. No, it's more insidious than that. It's the dull ache in the knees as you rise from a chair. The slow, stiff fingers that can no longer wrap around the garden tools. The invisible tension that turns restful sleep into a restless war of joints grinding and muscles protesting. Many assume it's just part of getting older. But what if that's not entirely true? What if a large part of that daily discomfort stems from something so simple, so fundamental, that most of us have overlooked it for decades? I'm talking about magnesium, the mineral that rarely gets a headline but silently determines the quality of your day. Magnesium isn't flashy. It doesn't get the same buzz as calcium or the hype of collagen. But here's what decades of scientific research and hundreds of conversations with elderly patients have made clear. Magnesium is your body's natural peacekeeper. It regulates over 300 biochemical processes in your body. That's not a typo, over 300. But among all its roles, the one most vital for seniors is its ability to calm inflammation, relax muscles, and stabilize the nervous system, 3 areas that, when disturbed, led directly to joint pain and arthritis flare-ups. Let's put it into context. When you have arthritis, your immune system is like a confused army, attacking your own joints. Magnesium steps in like a seasoned diplomat, calming the overreaction, reducing inflammation, and gently encouraging your muscles to release their tension. It doesn't force change, it invites it. And here's the twist. Most older adults are deficient in magnesium without even realizing it. What happens when you don't get enough? Imagine a day in the life of a body without magnesium. You wake up stiff, not because of just old age, but because your muscles never fully relax during sleep. You feel anxious or agitated, not realizing your nervous system is overstimulated due to mineral imbalance. You drink coffee to feel awake, but it flushes out even more magnesium, deepening the deficit. Your knees ache, your shoulders tighten, and by afternoon, your energy is gone. This isn't a made-up scenario. It's the everyday reality of countless people over 60. But when magnesium is replenished, the change is almost poetic. A warm bath for your joints. That's how one of our viewers, Marjorie, age 73, described it. I didn't expect much, she admitted during a video call from her kitchen in Vermont. But I started taking magnesium glycinate before bed, just 1 capsule, and within a week, my hips didn't feel like they were made of stone. I was sleeping better. I wasn't clenching my jaw at night. And for the first time in years, I actually wanted to take a walk in the morning. Marjorie's experience isn't rare. In fact, Studies show that magnesium can reduce C-reactive protein, a major marker of inflammation, in people with arthritis. It's like pouring cool water on a smoldering fire. Even better, magnesium helps balance cortisol, the stress hormone that spikes during arthritis flare-ups. Ever noticed how your pain is worse during emotional distress? That's not just coincidence, that's cortisol-fueled inflammation. Magnesium calms the storm. How to get it naturally? Here's where daily elder advice steps in with gentle, actionable wisdom. You don't need fancy supplements to start. Some of the most magnesium-rich foods are already in your kitchen. Leafy greens like spinach, kale, and Swiss chard. Avocados, creamy and full of good fats too. Almonds and pumpkin seeds, easy snacks, big benefits. Black beans and lentils. Bananas. And yes, even dark chocolate. Still, let's be honest. Many older adults aren't eating enough of these every day. Between medications, appetite changes, and digestive issues, food alone often isn't enough. That's where a high-absorption magnesium supplement can help. Look for magnesium glycinate, gentle on the stomach, highly bioavailable. Magnesium citrate, good for digestion, slightly laxative, helpful if you're constipated. Avoid magnesium oxide, it's cheap but poorly absorbed. Pro tip: magnesium works better when you're hydrated. Water helps shuttle it into your cells. Aim for 6 to 8 glasses of clean water daily, not juice. Not soda, not coffee, just pure water. The sleep connection. Another often overlooked bonus: better sleep. Magnesium helps regulate melatonin, the sleep hormone, and relaxes your nervous system. Many seniors report deeper sleep and fewer nighttime leg cramps after just a week of supplementation. And better sleep? That's the gateway to healing. Your body does its best repair work while you sleep, from soothing inflamed joints to rebuilding muscle tissue. So, magnesium doesn't just help you feel better during the day, it supports your body's repair crew overnight. I've worked with older adults for over 2 decades, and I've seen trends come and go: turmeric shots, fish oil frenzies, anti-inflammatory miracle teas. But magnesium is one of the few constants I return to again and again. Why? Because it's foundational. And healing is always stronger when it starts from the foundation. Too many seniors are chasing complex solutions while ignoring basic deficiencies. Magnesium isn't trendy, but it is transformational when your body's been running on empty. It doesn't promise miracles. It delivers restoration. And the best part, you can start today without prescriptions, without breaking the bank, and without waiting for someone else to fix your pain. The second, zinc, the quiet architect of joint repair. If magnesium is the calm, gentle friend that soothes your pain and helps you rest, then zinc is the steadfast builder, the one working behind the scenes to repair, reinforce, and restore your joints when you're not even paying attention. Let's not pretend zinc is popular. You've probably never had a conversation about zinc over dinner. But if you're living with arthritis, especially the autoimmune kind like rheumatoid arthritis, zinc may be one of the most underestimated tools you're missing in your recovery. At its core, zinc is a cellular repair agent. It doesn't just boost your immune system, though it does that exceptionally well. It also plays a critical role in tissue regeneration, collagen formation, and inflammatory regulation. This means it's helping rebuild the very structure of your joints, tendons, and connective tissues. Think about what arthritis is: the gradual breakdown of the cartilage that cushions your joints. Zinc helps build that cartilage back, not overnight, but steadily, cell by cell, like a craftsman restoring a cathedral. More importantly, for those battling autoimmune disorders, zinc acts like a modulator. It tells your immune system when to fight and when to stop. That's a game changer for seniors whose immune systems are attacking their own bodies. The inflammation zinc loop. Now here's something both fascinating and frustrating. Inflammation uses up your zinc, but you need zinc to fight inflammation. This creates a vicious cycle for people with arthritis. Your joint pain depletes your zinc, but without zinc, your joints can't heal. It's like trying to rebuild a house while someone keeps stealing your tools. The good news? Once you replenish zinc levels through diet or supplements, many people begin to notice subtle but powerful shifts. Less morning stiffness, faster healing after flare-ups, even improved energy. And we've seen this happen over and over. Meet Harold, a carpenter's quiet comeback. Harold was 68 when he came to one of our community wellness workshops. A retired carpenter, he had spent his life building homes, but now couldn't close his own hands without pain. Years of heavy lifting, combined with rheumatoid arthritis, had left his knuckles swollen and his grip weak. "I used to hold a hammer like it was an extension of my arm," Harold told us. "Now I can't even open a jar of jam without cursing." He had tried medications, creams, acupuncture. Nothing seemed to stick. What turned things around wasn't anything exotic. It was a simple zinc protocol, combined with anti-inflammatory meals and gentle stretching. 3 months later, Harold returned. His handshake firm again. "I'm not pain-free," he said, "but I've reclaimed something I thought I lost forever: control." That's what zinc does. It doesn't erase arthritis, but it helps your body fight back intelligently. Where to find zinc? Zinc isn't hard to find if you know where to look. Plant-based sources. Pumpkin seeds, one of the richest plant sources. Chickpeas, lentils, cashews, oats and quinoa. Animal-based sources. Oysters, zinc powerhouses. Beef and lamb. Chicken and turkey. Eggs. But here's where many seniors go wrong. They assume they're getting enough from food, when in reality, many older adults absorb nutrients less efficiently due to reduced stomach acid or medications like antacids. That's why supplementation can make all the difference. What kind of zinc should you take? Not all zinc supplements are created equal. Some forms are better absorbed, while others can cause stomach upset or compete with other minerals. Here's what works best. Zinc picolinate, highly bioavailable. Zinc gluconate, effective and gentle. Avoid zinc oxide. It's cheap and poorly absorbed. Important note: zinc can cause nausea if taken on an empty stomach. Always pair it with food. Also, don't take zinc at the same time as calcium supplements. They compete for absorption. Separate them by at least 2 to 3 hours. How long until you see results? Zinc is not a quick fix. It's a builder, not a fire extinguisher. But give it 3 to 6 weeks. And many people report reduced stiffness, stronger nails, improved wound healing, and even fewer colds, a sign your immune system is back in sync. Over time, zinc supports collagen production, rebuilding cartilage, wound repair, helping tiny tears inside your joints heal, hormonal balance, and one often overlooked benefit, gut health. Zinc helps seal the gut lining, reducing leaky gut, a root cause of systemic inflammation. When your gut is inflamed, your joints are never far behind. The third, boron, the forgotten mineral that could change everything. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard your doctor mention boron? Probably not. Even among health-conscious seniors, boron is rarely discussed. It's not trending on wellness blogs. It's not advertised on TV. And yet, for those battling stiff joints, brittle bones, or relentless arthritis, boron may be the missing link your body has been waiting for. This tiny, trace mineral may sound like something from a chemistry lab, but its role in human health, particularly in aging bodies, is surprisingly profound. Let's uncover why. What is boron, and why haven't you heard about it? Boron doesn't have a huge marketing budget. It doesn't sparkle like calcium or get packaged into flashy joint supplements. But beneath the radar, it's been quietly supporting human health for centuries, especially in cultures where soil and food are naturally rich in this mineral. So, what exactly does boron do? Think of it as a nutritional conductor. It doesn't do the heavy lifting itself, but it orchestrates the minerals and hormones that do. Here's what boron helps your body do. Absorb and retain magnesium, calcium, and vitamin D. Regulate estrogen and testosterone levels. Support bone density and joint flexibility. Reduce inflammatory enzymes that fuel arthritis. Protect against oxidative stress in aging tissues. That's a pretty impressive resume for something you've probably never heard about, isn't it? Why boron matters more as you age. A young body can afford to be a little inefficient. Hormones are high, bones are strong, and inflammation is minimal. But after 60, the story changes. Your ability to absorb key nutrients declines. Your hormone levels shift dramatically, especially after menopause. Your bones start to thin, joints get stiff, and inflammation becomes a daily guest. Boron helps balance that equation naturally. It doesn't replace hormones, but it keeps them in balance. It doesn't generate bone, but it helps calcium and magnesium get where they need to go. It doesn't eliminate inflammation overnight, but it lowers the inflammatory cascade that damages your joints day after day. And best of all, it works gently. No side effects, no risk of dependency, just small, steady progress. Real story, how boron gave Maria her garden back. Let me tell you about Maria, a 75-year-old widow from Northern California. Gardening had been her greatest joy until arthritis in her hands and knees made digging and pruning impossible. She tried painkillers. They dulled her senses. She tried hand braces. They slowed her down. She was told surgery might help, but at her age, it felt like a risky gamble. Then, during a senior nutrition workshop hosted by a local health cooperative, Maria learned about boron. Intrigued, she started small, eating a handful of dried apricots, almonds, and prunes every morning. 2 weeks in, she added a low-dose boron supplement, 3 milligrams daily. It wasn't dramatic, Maria told us. But one morning, I realized I could hold the pruning shears without flinching. That was the first time in years. It felt like coming back to life. Now she's back in her rose garden. She still has arthritis, but it doesn't define her anymore. That's the quiet power of boron. How to get more boron in her diet. Unlike other minerals, boron isn't added to most multivitamins or fortified foods. But nature provides, if you know where to look, boron-rich foods. Prunes and raisins, apples, pears, and grapes, dates, almonds and walnuts, dried apricots, avocados. Fun fact, people living in regions with boron-rich soil and water, like parts of Israel, Turkey, and Japan, tend to have significantly lower rates of arthritis. That's not coincidence, it's nutrition. If you're not a fan of dried fruit or nuts, or if your diet is restricted, consider a boron supplement, but keep it small. 3 to 6 milligrams per day is plenty for most older adults. Boron's hidden superpowers. Beyond bones and joints, boron has some bonus benefits that are especially valuable for seniors. Cognitive protection. Boron may support memory and reduce oxidative stress in the brain. Hormone regulation. Boron helps balance testosterone and estrogen, both of which decline with age and affect joint and bone health. Anti-aging defense. By reducing oxidative stress, boron slows cellular aging and helps tissues recover from wear and tear. And here's something you probably didn't know. Boron helps ensure calcium goes into your bones, not your arteries. That's a huge deal. Improper calcium metabolism is one of the reasons seniors experience arterial calcification, increasing the risk of heart disease. In my decades of speaking with seniors across continents from rural Thailand to urban Boston, I've noticed something profound. Those who age well aren't always the fittest or wealthiest, they're the most consistent. They don't chase trends, they trust in nature, and they nourish their bodies in small, intelligent ways that build resilience over time. Boron may not make headlines, but it builds the scaffolding of strength that keeps you moving with confidence in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond. It helps keep the music of your life playing without interruption from grinding joints or hormone crashes or fragile bones. And that's a gift you deserve. Food versus supplements. What should you really take after 60? Let's be honest. When you're standing in the supplement aisle, staring at rows of bottles with words like ultra absorption or maximum strength, It's easy to feel overwhelmed. Magnesium citrate, zinc gluconate, boron complex. Where do you even start? And yet, in the next aisle over are bananas, almonds, spinach, raisins. So which is better, real food or supplements? The truth is, both have their place. But the answer depends on your age, your body's ability to absorb, and your lifestyle. Let's break it down clearly, calmly, and realistically, like we always do here on Daily Elder Advice. First, what food can do that pills can't? There's a reason nature wrapped nutrients in whole foods. When you eat an avocado or a handful of pumpkin seeds, you're not just getting magnesium or zinc, you're also getting fiber for gut health, healthy fats for joint lubrication, phytonutrients that fight oxidative stress, synergistic compounds that improve absorption. For example, magnesium from spinach comes with potassium, and vitamin K. Zinc from lentils comes with B vitamins. Boron from prunes comes with antioxidants and natural sugars that fuel your cells. Whole foods offer a symphony of nutrients, not just solo acts. And for many seniors, especially those not on restrictive diets, whole food is still the best and most sustainable source of minerals, provided your digestion is working properly. But here's the catch: absorption declines with age. Around age 50, your body becomes less efficient at absorbing nutrients, even when you eat well. Here's why. Stomach acid levels drop, making it harder to break down and absorb minerals like calcium, magnesium, and zinc. Medications like proton pump inhibitors, blood pressure meds, or diuretics interfere with mineral retention. Chronic inflammation, common in arthritis, depletes mineral stores faster. Appetite changes mean smaller, less diverse meals. So, even if you're eating leafy greens and nuts every day, you might still be falling short, not from poor choices, but from an aging digestive system. That's where targeted supplementation becomes helpful. What supplements can do that food sometimes can't? Supplements are not magic, but they're tools. And when used wisely, they can bridge nutritional gaps when your diet is lacking, deliver therapeutic doses of minerals in bioavailable forms, work faster for people with chronic deficiencies, bypass digestion. If you've been diagnosed with low magnesium or zinc deficiency, supplements can raise your levels in weeks, not months. And for people living with chronic arthritis, time matters. How to choose the right strategy for you? Here's a decision framework we often share in our consultations. Choose food first if you have a good appetite and a diverse, balanced diet, are not taking medications that interfere with absorption, don't have severe arthritis symptoms yet, want long-term maintenance and prevention. Add supplements if you have already been diagnosed with arthritis, experience muscle cramps, insomnia, or weakness, eat small meals or follow a restricted diet, are on medications that affect gut function, want faster, more noticeable support. And remember, you don't have to choose one or the other. The most powerful results often come from combining both. Let's take a moment to pause and breathe. You've just journeyed through some of the most quietly powerful truths about arthritis and aging. Truths that most people never hear. We didn't give you magic. We didn't promise overnight cures. What we offered was something far more real, science you can understand, stories you can relate to, and hope you can act on. And if you're watching this, chances are you're carrying more than just physical pain. You might be carrying the fear that things won't improve, that your best days are behind you, that the stiffness in your joints is permanent. But I want to tell you this, clearly and compassionately. Your body hasn't given up on you. It never has. It's still trying to heal, even if it's been doing it quietly, in the background, for years. Maybe all it needs now is for you to believe in it again. Magnesium, zinc, boron, these aren't fads. They're not part of some trend. They're the building blocks your body has been asking for. Not just to reduce pain, but to restore function. Not just to relieve inflammation, but to bring you back to the life you thought you lost, the walks you used to enjoy, the projects you put aside, the hugs you hesitated to reach for. Here at Daily Elder Advice, We don't talk to older adults as if they're fragile. We talk to you as the strong, resilient survivors that you are. You've carried children, endured loss, rebuilt yourself again and again. This stage of life, it's not an ending, it's a powerful chapter. Maybe the one where you finally start taking care of you. Not out of vanity, but out of deep, earned self-respect. So, if you're sitting there wondering whether change is still possible, whether there's still time to feel better, the answer is yes. It doesn't matter whether you start with a handful of pumpkin seeds, a magnesium capsule before bed, or a walk around the block. What matters is that you start. Healing isn't about perfection, it's about progress. And today, by choosing to watch, listen, and learn, you've already taken a powerful step forward. Now we'd love to hear from you. What mineral are you most excited to try? Magnesium, zinc, or boron? What natural methods have helped you feel stronger, freer, more like yourself? Drop a comment below. Because when you share, you don't just help yourself, you might light the way for someone else still sitting silently in pain. If you found this video valuable, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Daily Elder Advice, and share it with someone you love. Together, we are rewriting what aging looks like. Together, we're showing the world that growing older doesn't mean growing weaker, it means growing wiser, braver, and more intentional with our health. You are not your diagnosis. You are your healing journey. And it starts today. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, be kind to your body. It's been carrying you a long way, and it still has beautiful places left to go.